Thanks for tuning in here to the Real Jonathan Smith Show. So, I want to start with a little bit of kind of college football, really just football in general. I love college football. Okay, grew up every Saturday morning. We're waking up, me, my dad, my brother. We're watching college game day, and then we're watching all the games, every single one. I grew up in the South, where college football is king. Up here, Midwest, Indianapolis, the NFL, very much the king. Okay, but because I love college football so much, I keep track of everything that happens, every single thing. Because going back to my roots of waking up, watching Darren McFadden run for over 300 yards against South Carolina, multiple touchdowns, and Steve Spurrier still not putting him on his Heisman ballot. You know, we're going all the way back. That's like 17 years ago. Okay, I love college football. Darren McFadden snubbed twice to the Heisman, by the way. But I'm not, let me relax a little bit. I love college football. I track everything, especially over these past couple years, because college sports in general, but especially college football, has changed a ton. Okay, NIL, the transfer portal, right? Like the two biggest buzzwords in college football. You walk into a sports bar on a Wednesday night, man, you breathe those two words, you can get people firing off takes really quickly. Okay, those two things have completely changed and revolutionized not only college football, but college basketball and college baseball and every other major college sport. And, with NIL and with the transfer portal, we have seen several teams pivot. Okay, really every team. Okay, Alabama now recruits the transfer portal really hard. They give out a bunch of NIL money. Ohio State does the exact same thing. They recruit the transfer portal. They give out a bunch of NIL money. So does Texas and Utah and Washington and Oregon and Florida and every major college football program. Miami, who's going to be really good this year. Every major college football program has pivoted to this new way of doing things, because that's what you have to do to survive and stay at the top. Okay, sports, it's like the jungle. You can adapt or you can die. Just ask any Major League Baseball player. Okay, without fail, it always happens. Guy gets called up. They hit like 350 in their first 2 months. And then teams go back. They look at those first 100 bats, and they're like, okay, he doesn't hit this, or this very well, so we're going to throw him all that. And then they either have to adapt and learn how to hit that pitch, or they die. Same thing in every sport, because sports are constantly changing. And when I talk about college football teams pivoting, every team has done that except for one. And that one team is Clemson. Go back 6 years. Clemson won a national title 6 years ago. They beat Alabama during a time in which nobody beat Alabama, right? So while all these other major college football programs have pivoted and changed the way that they've done things, Alabama, NIL and transfer portal, really important. Georgia, NIL and the transfer portal, really important. Ohio State, NIL and the transfer portal, really important. Okay, the rest of these top college football programs have done the same thing. Every college football program has done this except for Clemson. What's the reputation with Clemson now? They're left in the dust. They're a dinosaur because of their unwillingness to change. And it all starts at the top with Dabo Swinney. He refuses to recruit the transfer portal. Many people, including me, think he's an idiot for this. Okay? Like seriously, like the transfer portal is like, that's where you can upgrade your roster and where you can get better. Okay, we see teams do it all the time. It's like, oh, we have a weakness at free safety. Maybe we should go into the transfer portal and add a free safety. And then the best teams do that. Not Clemson, though, because Dabo Swinney preaches, can't say it enough, how no one is better than his guys. You hear Dabo say it all the time. No one's better than the guys that I brought in here. No one's better than the guys that I recruited. And I was thinking about this the other day because, as I said, I love college football. Okay, I'm watching it all the time, and I'm thinking about Dabo Swinney and this hardcore commitment to his guys and his refusal to go to the transfer portal. And then I was like, you know what this sounds a lot like? Chris Ballard. Sounds exactly like him. And I feel like the Colts are in a similar position, whereas 6, 7, 8 years ago, when the Colts popped up on your schedule, you kind of perked up a little bit. It's like, that's a good football team. They're probably going to win double-digit games, right? Like they're going to play well, right? And now, as things have changed and Andrew Luck retired and they've brought in a new quarterback and Matt Ryan didn't pan out and Phillip Rivers was good for a year and he didn't want to come back for a second year. As all these things have happened, we have seen this refusal from Chris Ballard to make a pivot, to go outside the building, to get help and to add talent. No one likes the players on the Colts roster more than the Colts. Just like how no one likes the players in college football on Clemson's roster more than Clemson. Okay, a refusal to go outside of your walls and add talent. In this day and age, where player mobility is becoming more and more popular, these NFL players looked over at the NBA and they're like, we want what they have, and that is player mobility, college football, right? It was deemed unfair that, these coaches and these universities kind of controlled the fate of a lot of these athletes. And so things have very quickly changed. And if you don't change along with it, then you very quickly get left behind. And that is what we're seeing happen, not only to Clemson in college football, but we're seeing the exact same thing happen with the Indianapolis Colts. This refusal to go out into free agency and to improve the roster is a major, major issue. Seriously, I can hear Chris Ballard. Why would we go get Justin Simmons when we have Nick Cross? That shouldn't even be a statement. That shouldn't even be a question. The answer is because Justin Simmons is one of the 10 best safeties in the league, and Nick Cross isn't. Okay, you have to look to make upgrades. Okay, why spend the extra cap space that you have on good players when you already have average players in your building, right? That is the Chris Ballard way. No one likes Colts players more than Chris Ballard. Okay, all the while, while Chris Ballard is very content and this Colts organization is very content to just kind of sit back, relax, let the guys that they drafted, sink or swim. You look around the NFL and teams that are aggressive continue to win games. Okay? The Colts are potentially going to get left behind by the teams in their division. If the Colts finished in last in the AFC South this year, I think we would all be surprised, but we wouldn't be stunned. Okay? If the Titans are better than the Colts this year, the answer will be incredibly obvious. It'll be because the Tennessee Titans were hyper aggressive and going out in free agency and adding good players. That's what they did. L'Jarius Sneed. They went and added DeAndre Hopkins last year. They went and added Calvin Ridley. They went and added Jamal Adams. Hyper aggressive. Okay, let's go out. Let's add players. Let's get better. Okay, let's not just rely on our own drafting ability to be good. Okay, that's ignorant. That's dumb. If the Texans wind up being better than the Colts this year, it'll be, in part, because they traded for Stephon Diggs. They sat back. They looked at their roster. They're like, you know what would be really nice? A proven veteran wide receiver, because we like Tank Dell and we like Nico Collins. We like these guys, but they're kind of young. It'd be nice if we had a veteran presence, a guy that we know that we can depend on week to week. So they're like, okay, let's go get Stephon Diggs. And they did. That's smart. You have to be willing to go outside of your building and add players. Let's look at the Jaguars. If the Jags finish ahead of the Colts in the division this year, it'll be in part because they went out and they added Eric Armstead, one of the better defensive linemen in the NFL, a guy who can get after the quarterback and create a pass rush. Now, when you head down to Jacksonville, or in Jacksonville comes to your city, you got to block Josh Allen on the edge, who's incredible, 17 and a half sacks last year. And you have to try to block Eric Armstead, who's been an absolute beast in San Francisco for most of his career. Now he's in Jacksonville for the next 3 years. 3 years, $51 million. That's how much he's making down there. Okay, so they add him on the defensive side of the ball. And look, if the Jags are better than the Colts, it'll also be in part because they went out and they signed Gabe Davis, a good, legitimate, deep threat wide receiver. Okay, it's like teams in the AFC South are making moves. They're looking to make improvements on their roster. And I sit back and I go, geez, I really wish that, the Colts would do that. Who the Colts had this offseason? Raekwon Davis, who's a good player. Don't get me wrong. Coming over from the Miami Dolphins, saw, a lot of him this last year being, a Miami Dolphins fan. Good player, but he's a backup. Who's going to have a bigger impact? Gabe Davis and Eric Armstead in Jacksonville, or a backup defensive tackle that Chris Ballard went and added? Come on now. Like, I look at the Colts compared to the rest of their division, and it feels like they're playing with a hand tied behind their back. That's what it feels like. It's like we are only going to build through the draft. That is it. We don't want anybody from outside the building. We don't want Justin Simmons, one of the 10 best safeties in the league. We don't want Calvin Ridley to come in and kind of give us a little extra depth and beefing up the wide receiver room. Wouldn't it be nice if the Colts had Calvin Ridley right now? That Josh Downs injury wouldn't be as big of a deal if they had a guy like Calvin Ridley or Stephon Diggs. Seriously, like at some point, one of two things has to happen. Chris Ballard has to wake up and be willing to go out and attack free agency and add good players. Okay, even if you already have good players at that position. Like imagine if he'd gone out and signed Christian Wilkins, who's now playing for the Raiders, one of the better defensive tackles in the NFL. I don't know if you watched the first preseason game, but man, the back end of that defensive tackle unit's terrible. It's rough. So even if it's just shoring up depth and adding pieces or just adding good players, I'm a believer that the more good players you have, the better you're going to be. I know that's not some, wild, groundbreaking take. But seriously, like look at the Colts compared to the rest of their division. They are very quickly going to get left behind if there is not a change in philosophy. The same thing that happened to Clemson, a team 6 years ago that was competing for and winning national titles, is now being left in the dust. When college football teams see Clemson on their schedule, it's like, oh, they'll be good, but that's nothing we can't handle. I think NFL teams had the exact same response to the Colts. It's like, oh, we got to play the Colts. They went like 9-8 last year. I think they went 9-8 the year before that, and the year before that, and the year before that, and it's like they're average, like if we don't play our best, they can definitely beat us, but that's nothing we can't handle. Whereas 6 years ago, when the Colts showed up, you're like, oh man, like we have to play well or we are going to lose. And part of that was because Andrew Luck was still around and all that, but still, the president remains the same. Look around the Colts division. Okay. Like they're making moves. They're adding players in the offseason through free agency and through trades. Meanwhile, the Colts are like, you know what? No, we're just going to draft guys and hope and pray that they turn out well. Hopefully, maybe we can develop these guys. Okay, the Colts are in jeopardy of getting left behind. There has to be a change in the way in which the Colts go about business, especially in free agency, if they want to have a chance to consistently win the division or to have a chance to win playoff games and, maybe even win a Super Bowl. Something has to change philosophy-wise in that front office. And I doubt it's going to happen with Chris Ballard calling the shots.